Hello guys, it's Weebupins here. You can call me Weebs, and this video is about Boku no Hero. However, as you can tell from the title, there's not going to be a lot of positive talk about Boku no Hero in this video. So if you're a major fanboy of Boku no Hero, then please click off the video because you're not going to like what I'm going to have to say about this series. Personally, I don't blame you. But for those of you that stick around, I do want to say a few things about Boku no Hero. I genuinely did enjoy this series at one point, and it was great for the most part. The premise, even though it was simple, was still nice and refreshing to see. It was interesting and it was fun. The characters were interesting, they were enjoyable, and I actually like a lot of the characters within this series. However, as of recently, this series to me has just been facing a massive decline in quality, and I'm going to be going into that throughout this entire video. So there's going to be spoilers, and there's going to be a lot of bad talking about Boku no Hero. So if you don't want to be spoiled and you don't want to hear somebody talk negatively of a show that you enjoyed, then please do yourself a favor, do me a favor, and just leave the video. It's perfectly fine, it's understandable, and it's not something that anyone can actually blame you for. Anyway, without further ado, let me get into this video. So, the decline for Boku no Hero for me starts with the hero licensing exam arc. This arc was actually not that bad, but it wasn't even that good either. This arc doesn't even have that many moments that actually seem eventful. It's a forgettable arc for the most part. Honestly, I forgot this arc even existed at one point. The introduction of somebody like Inasa and the kids from Seketsu doesn't really matter much to me, because in my head, any new characters introduced don't really matter that much. The only characters that seem to matter towards anyone's development are characters that exist for the sake of developing Deku, and that's really it. Anyone else doesn't really seem to matter. Inasa doesn't really seem to matter. Cammy doesn't seem to matter. That one kid that can turn people into like blobbish monsters doesn't seem to matter. And funny enough, this isn't the first time we were introduced to a cast of interesting characters and they're completely swept under the rug for Deku, Bakugo, and Todoroki. For example, anyone remember Class B? I do. Does anyone remember anybody from Class B? Probably not. Well, maybe Tetsu because his name's funny, but that's really it. And we don't really get much from these characters after a certain arc because these guys are sidelined later on in the series. It's unfortunate too because the people from Class B seemed interesting enough that I wouldn't mind actually having a spin-off series seeing what these guys are doing or having a few chapters dedicated to the people of Class B. Because at this point, I already know we're not going to see these guys unless we see them within a cameo way later in the series where they might comment on something happening. And that's really it. However, it's not even just Class B and the kids of Seketsu High School that are underdeveloped, it's the majority of Class A. We don't really know much about anybody from Class A unless they're Bakugo, Deku, or Todoroki. Anyone else, we vaguely have an idea as to what their goals are, what their interests are, who they are as people, why they are the way they are. That's really it. Or we get like small little snippets of why these characters matter or what they're doing and their who, when, what, and where and all that other nonsense. We don't really have like this really big development from any of the characters that aren't Deku, Todoroki, and Bakugo. We have a little bit of Uchako and we have a little bit of Ida, but other than that, no one else really seems to matter that much. And it's unfortunate, but that's the case for the series. It has a really big cast, but the majority of the characters just don't really matter. And it's hard to say you can care for most of these characters either. So that's my first point right there, is that the hero licensing exam arc really puts into perspective the importance of other characters in the series. They don't matter. We have all these characters introduced and we hardly know anything about them. Yeah, there's small little things here and there and a little bit of trivia, but what can anyone tell me about Sarah? What can anyone really tell me about Mineta besides he's a pervert? What can anyone really tell me about the guy that likes to talk to animals? I don't even know his fucking name. What can anyone tell me about that character? We have an entire classroom of a cast and we don't really know much about any of them, except for about 5 of them. We hardly know anything about Aizawa, so this series doesn't really seem to favor developing characters, and maybe it doesn't have to really appeal to a lot of people, but to me, I want to see development of these characters. Even old shonen series like Bleach and Naruto managed to develop characters to some type of degree. But for Boku no Hero, they're mostly just tropes. Like Aoyama, he's just a weird kid, and Momo is just that rich girl that's really nice. That's really it. These guys are nothing more than just tropes for the most part. The side characters aren't even the biggest issue when it comes to characters. No, not at all. The main antagonist of the series is the biggest issue when it comes to characters. So now I'm going to transition into talking about Shigaraki Tomura. Before really getting into my issues with Shigaraki, I have a question. Can someone please tell me one thing Shigaraki has done that wasn't influenced by somebody else? Anyone? No? The Nomus? No, that was all for one. Attacking the school? No, all for one. Shigaraki has done absolutely nothing within this series. For people to say that Shigaraki is maturing and he's getting smarter, can I get examples, please? Like, I'm genuinely asking for examples, because I haven't seen Shigaraki do much of anything within the series. For example, when Shigaraki met with Deku, that led to nothing. Nothing came from that. Nothing amounted from that encounter with Deku and Shigaraki. And it's weird, right? Because the main antagonist and the main protagonist meeting for the first time, you'd think there'd be some kind of impact with that. You'd think there'd be something going from there. Shigaraki has not impacted the series in any way whatsoever. You can honestly replace Shigaraki with a plank of wood and nothing in the series would change. And that's a problem. Your main antagonist for your series should be impacting the entire story. Let's take an example from Bleach. Sosuke Aizen, when he first introduced himself as the antagonist of the series and he first did something, it impacted the entire series. How the series developed, how characters thought about certain things, how things were handled. There was impact to that. We're about 180 chapters into Boku no Hero, and Shigaraki Tomura has done absolutely nothing. You can say he got the League of Villains together, but in hindsight, that wasn't really him. The reason why he has Dabi and Toga is literally because of Stain. It wasn't because of Shigaraki. Stain has had way more of an impact in the series than Shigaraki ever has, and Stain has been in the series less than Shigaraki. He had an entire arc, but Shigaraki is supposed to be the main antagonist of the series, and he hasn't impacted the series in any way close to how Stain has impacted the series. What Stain did has had people develop ideologies, form together, be different kinds of villains and different kinds of heroes. He had an impact on Deku as a character. Stain's interaction with Deku, that one interaction with Deku, had an entire impact on Deku's perspective and how he sees heroes. It had an entire impact on how heroes are looked at to society. It had an entire impact on how villains wanted to act and how villains wanted to be. That's what Shigaraki should be. Shigaraki should have been what Stain is. Stain, with just one appearance, has been a significantly better villain than Shigaraki. The thing is, I don't even want Shigaraki to fail. Shigaraki has a destructive quirk, it's really powerful, and he should be a threatening force within the series, but he's not. For the most part, at least in my eyes, Shigaraki is a joke of a character, and it doesn't seem to be really getting any better. Off-screen development is not development to me. It's not good development, at least. I want to see the things Shigaraki is doing. I don't want someone to tell me what Shigaraki is doing. I want to be shown these things. I want to be shown Shigaraki's development. All I'm saying is Shigaraki should matter more. If he's going to be set up to be the main antagonist of the series, he's supposed to be the one set up for the big fight towards the end of the series with Deku most likely, then he should be doing more. The things he does should also matter as well. However, even then, this still isn't even my biggest problem with this series. So let's move on to the next point. Plot progression. Plot progression in Boku no Hero after the hero licensing exam arc seems to be non-existent. It seems like a lot of the arcs seem to be recycling themselves in terms of basis. For example, meeting different new students outside of his classroom that make Deku see things from a different perspective. How the kids in Class B don't feel appreciated because the kids of 1A is the same way Seketsu High School felt to being compared to UA. It's the same basis. One group of students feels underappreciated compared to Deku and his classmates. We've seen this already. Looking at the Chisaki arc, Deku training somewhere under some professional heroes, and suddenly a kid is in danger, and therefore Deku has to go save that kid. We've seen it already with Kota during the camping trip arc. Deku fighting against an anti-hero of sorts and getting a brand new perspective as to how he sees heroes and villains. We've seen it already with the Stain arc. The same themes seem to be repeating themselves within Boku no Hero, and I'm kind of tired of seeing the same thing over and over again. This is supposed to be about Deku and his progression into becoming the #1 hero, but we haven't really seen much of any progress of that for a long time now. We've seen Deku get new abilities, and that's cool, right? But that doesn't really show me anything towards his goal of becoming the next big hero. I get that other things need to happen, there's a story that needs to be told, but this isn't really telling me much of Deku's story. These things probably matter to some degree, and it might lead to something later on within the series, but it just seems like repetitive themes that are being used over and over again. And this may seem nitpicky, but I can't be the only one to notice that these themes seem to be the same, and nothing is happening towards Deku becoming a hero. I want to see Deku's development. I'm watching this for Deku's journey into becoming the #1 hero. Him saving Eri is fine and all, but the entire Chisaki arc dragged on way longer than it had to, and Deku could have not existed within that arc, and the arc would have pretty much have been the same. He didn't matter towards that arc. Honestly, him being in the arc actually kind of ruined it a little bit, because the only good things about the Chisaki arc was Kirishima's fight and Mirio fighting Chisaki. And honestly, Mirio defeating Chisaki was something I wanted way more than Deku defeating Chisaki. The only reason Deku defeated Shisaki was because Deku is the main character. That's probably the only reason why. Other than that, I don't see why Mirio couldn't have defeated Chisaki when he's having no issues with Chisaki, even when he was quirkless. The entire Chisaki arc could have happened without Deku, and it wouldn't have made a difference to me whatsoever. Now, I like Deku. I enjoy Izuku Midoriya. He's probably my favorite character within the series. However, he wasn't really significant to that arc, and it was the longest manga arc within the series, and it dragged on, and it just seemed very boring. It seemed like nothing was happening. It didn't seem to really progress anything. And this is what I'm talking about when it comes to plot progression within the series. It doesn't seem like much is happening towards the progression that we need. Before Deku had his quirk mastered to some degree, he was banging himself up, he was trying to figure out ways to work with his quirk and the condition that he had it in, and that was progression. We were seeing Deku grow and develop. However, we haven't seen really much of anything yet. We've seen these themes already. We've seen Deku go for these things already. I want to see something new. I want to see something different. And that's my issue with Boku no Hero right now. It seems like nothing is really happening. Currently, we're in an arc where Endeavor is supposed to be getting redemption for all of the things that he's done. Endeavor is unredeemable in my eyes. He's a complete and utter asshole. He's scum, honestly. A complete piece of shit. To physically and mentally abuse your wife and neglect your children is not something that can easily be forgiven. I don't care if Endeavor is meant to be a good guy in the series. Forgiving him for what he's done just because he is the good guy is just insulting, honestly. He's only changing because he feels like he needs to, because All Might is not the #1 hero anymore and he is, not because he wanted to change for his family. Endeavor is a terrible, terrible person. And that was the breaking point for me with this series. With all the nothing happening and the lack of proper plot progression and the lack of character development, why Endeavor? Why not Shigaraki? Why not Deku? Why not a bunch of other characters that deserve way more attention? It's not the basis as to why I did this rant. I didn't do this to just rip on Endeavor at the end as my final conclusion, but it's to bring attention to the issues within Boku no Hero. It's great at times, and there's definitely going to be great moments in between all of the shit. The actual fights and moments between Deku and Bakugo are great. Most of the moments with All Might were pretty decent and pretty great and fantastic to watch. Most of the interactions with the other students before they're tossed aside are enjoyable and they're nice to see. But for the most part, Boku no Hero to me just isn't really cutting it anymore as a series. Maybe later the series will improve and things will happen. Characters will get developed. Plot will actually progress. Shigaraki might actually do something fucking out of this world that no one would expect. But until then, as it stands now, Boku no Hero just isn't that good. It's been declining. Anyway guys, that's my rant. Arigato and ja matane.